I'd like to, of course, first introduce the lady of the hour. And not a lot, perhaps you already know her resume, but it's nice to say these things because you want to acknowledge how great a writer she is. All right. Our writer, our lady of the hour, is a writer of, an author of 10 books, including When the Rainbow Goddess Wept, Vegan and Other Stories, Acapulco at Sunset and Other Stories. She is multi-awarded. She is a recipient of California Arts Council Fellowship in Fiction, a Brody Arts Fund Award, a Special Recognition Award for her work dealing with Asian American youths, and an Outstanding Individual Award given by her beloved city, Cebu City. She's also a lecturer of universities such as UCLA. USC here would mean University of Southern California, University of Connecticut, and the University of the Philippines. Ladies and gentlemen, let us give a warm round of applause to the lady of the hour, Miss or Tita Cecilia Manguerra Brainard.
Thank you, Chappy.
Hello. I made you stand for the 2 minutes. How are you?
I'm good.
This is my first time actually meeting and talking to Tita Cecilia. I had a wonderful chat with her a while ago. And there are so many questions that I would like to ask you that I did not ask you earlier.
Okay.
Anyway, so how's Cebu? How's your visit here in Cebu?
It's sort of hectic. I was here just last week, and I'm leaving for Manila tomorrow. But I have a guest from Manila, Maribel Paras, and we had the opportunity to visit Plantation Bay.
Nice.
So we spent a couple of days there. It was very fun.
But you are based already in?
Most of the time I'm in California.
All right.
But I always visit twice a year.
Twice a year. Since you left for the States, you always come here twice a year?
I try to.
Right.
When the children were smaller, it was harder. But now they're older, so I have more time.
Yeah. All right.
I always come for the Fiesta sa Parian. Where is the Fiesta de Parian person?
Which is
June 24.
all right. So you'll be here again when you come back. Okay, June 24.
Hopefully.
All right, nice. All right. So you've been flying in and out. Are there changes that I'm sure there are changes that you've seen in Cebu. Any changes that you welcome? Any changes in Cebu that you think are in a way good for you?
Notable?
Notable?
You know, when I think of Cebu and I compare it to when I was young, it has grown a lot, of course. I mean, when we grew up, it seemed as if you knew everyone, and now it's much larger. So that's just a comment. The one thing that I do appreciate is a kind of a vibrant presence now of younger people like you and Henry, who have brought in this theatrical, literary kind of energy into the milieu. So I like that a lot.
To those who are just coming in, we are interviewing Cecilia Manguerra Brainard. All right, for this segment, I just really want to ask you about your early influences in your writing. I've read your biography, and you started writing at a very early age.
Yes.
At age 9 years old, if I'm not mistaken.
And I always tell the story, but it's a story that I tell. My father died when I was 9. And after he died, I used to write him letters to update him of my life. And at some point in time, my sister gave me a lock and key diary, one of those pink ones with the keys. And I started writing. And I would write little corny poems, and I would, just basically I was sort of practicing, writing.
Are these letters have you kept these letters that you've written?
Wala na. But however, I have the first diary. I have kept them all.
Nice.
So it was practice, and then from there, then it went on to stories and so on.
Because I saw there that you wrote, that you published your diary from 1960.
Yes. At some point in time, my publisher, or the woman I was working with, encouraged me to excerpt it. And so I pulled out excerpts, and it's Cecilia's diary.
So your first publication was the diary. Was it the diary?
No.
No. What was your first publication?
The first publication was a short story collection called Woman with Horns and Other Stories. And in that collection, the collection featured many stories set in my mythical place called Ubek, which is Cebu backwards.
And then we're going to talk about Ubek later on. All right, interesting. When you started writing, did you already think that somehow this was something that you're going to do for the rest of your life? This was something that you're going to focus on?
No, because when I because I didn't know what I wanted to be. I mean, at some point I thought I wanted to be an engineer like my father, but the mind was not good enough to be an engineer. And then I wanted to be a filmmaker, and then that didn't pan out. But I think that the element of storytelling was strong. And I think that's something that we Cebuanos do. We like to tell stories. We call it gossiping in the afternoon, magmerienda, magchismis-chismis. But it's storytelling. Huh? I mean, that's basically what it is. Catching up.
Tita, when you started out as a writer, were there challenges that you met along the way?
Plenty. First of all, it's really hard to publish. Whether it's here or in the United States, it's not easy. So you have to work hard, and you have to be good. And sometimes you have to be better than good. And then you have to be lucky, because sometimes you meet the right person or whatever. Yeah.
I've also read in your bio that you were educated in STC in Marino, now Miriam College.
Yes.
Now, do you think that being educated in an all-girls school had somehow affected your style of writing, your tone of writing?
The writing. Well, you know, I will tell you that the education that I got at St. Teresa's College and at Marino was top-notch. And even when I went on to California and I studied at UCLA, I felt I could compete. And I think because they were good educators and they taught us how to think and how to perform.
Any writers that influenced your writing when you were younger?
When I was younger, I read a lot of Western books like everybody else. So, yeah, I read Hemingway and Faulkner and, you know, all of that. But I will tell you that a woman writer who really influenced me a lot is our own Cebuana writer, Lina Espina Moore. And the reason that Lina influenced me a lot, and maybe some people still remember Lina Espina Moore. Does anybody remember Lina? Some people do. Lina taught me about writer's voice. Writer's voice. She would say, "Dai, write like you talk. Write like you talk." It's not exactly like that, you know, but I understood what she meant. In other words, I should not write and sound like Hemingway or Faulkner, but I should sound like Cecilia Manguerra Brainard. And that's a very important thing I learned from Lina. So it's the writer's voice.
Nice. Interestingly, are you ready? Yes? I think we are ready. I got a sign from Henry. We are ready for another reading. And this time, this is from. Sorry, did I was?
No problem.
This is from Cebu Literary Festival. Please put your hands together for Miss Jane Frias. I'm Chappy Piramide. Let's continue, Tita. The lady of the hour, of course, is our author. But there's another lady that we're going to talk about, and her name is Magdalena. This is the book that we are launching. Tita, who is Magdalena for you?
Magdalena is a character in a book, and actually the novel is unwieldy. The novel is really not just about Magdalena. It's actually about 3 generations of women, and one of them is Magdalena. So we are talking about Magdalena, but then we are also talking about her mother, and we are also talking about her grandmother. And the common denominator of these characters is that they had all been influenced by wars that had happened in the Philippines. So Magdalena was affected by the Vietnam War, and there is Mactan there. And the mother had been affected by World War II, and the grandmother had been affected by the Spanish-American War.
Thank you. I'm reading the book, and such an interesting read. I've just started last night, actually, and I found it very easy to read. It's very easy to read. I have a question, Tita. This was published in 2002.
Yeah.
And again in 2008.
Right.
And we are publishing it again this year.
Oh, it's actually 202 and then 2 now.
All right.
It had
The
several
second print is
reprintings.
2008. All right. Are there any differences as to the first edition and the edition now?
Okay, basically the story is the same, but when I was working on this Philippine edition with the University of Santo Tomas Press, I'm actually a better writer now, and so I was able to clean it up better. So if you have a good eye, you will see that it's better, but it's basically the same. It's just cleaner.
As I was saying, we were chatting earlier this afternoon, and then if you've read the story, you'd realize that, of course, the book has chapters, and each chapter has a title. Now, if I were to read it again, I can just pick a chapter that I like and appreciate it without having to read the other chapters, because I felt that the book or any chapter can stand on its own. Is it the technique that you did, Tita, so that it would be perhaps easier, an easier read?
No, this was not a technique that I planned on. Actually, when I started writing this book, I started writing it in a linear way from beginning on, going through a timeline. But if you're a writer, I see some writers here, they know that sometimes the work will have its own demands. So what was happening to me was that I was starting to get bored. When I would write in a linear way, I would start to literally fall asleep. And after struggling with this for maybe 2-3 years, I actually gave up because it wasn't a good book.
2 or 3 years?
Yeah, so I had a draft. I had a draft that was not like that. And it was boring. And so I said, I do not have a novel. So I set it aside. And then I said, sayang naman, kanugon pud. So I went back and I tried to pull out short stories from them. Basically, I cleaned it up, I honed down each part. And as I was doing this, it occurred to me that that was what the novel wanted to be. So, in many sense, it's sort of like a collection of short stories, but not. So that's what happened there. And having said that, it is not linear. It jumps around. So sometimes we are in the 1960s with Magdalena, and then the next chapter we are back in whatever it is. Yeah. So it's a little bit of a challenge. The literary folk and poets like it a lot. This book.
I appreciate it. I appreciate the presentation of the book. When you read the book, you also get the feel. If you're a Cebuana, you'd also know that somehow this is about Cebu, or the place is Cebu. But when you look at the name of the place, it's not Cebu, it's Ubek. Ubek. Was it intentionally done to reverse it in a way?
Yeah. Very early on when I started writing, I used to write about Cebu. And I would be inspired by stories around Cebu, like the woman with horns. There was an ongo kuno here, that sort of thing. So, but when I would write using Cebu as my backdrop, I had to tell the truth. And it was hard to write. And one day I was because I had to tell the truth, you're writing about Cebu. But then one day I was kind of fooling around and I reversed it and I made ube. And I said, oh, that looks nice. So then I said, what if I make my setting ube? And I did that. And what happened was like magic because I could lie. I did not have to tell the truth about the Ongo. I did not have to tell the truth about what exactly Santo Niño Church was. Where St. Catherine's was. I could just change things around.
But there were so many references like Magdalongon, Mactan Island in the book. Interestingly enough, when we were talking about this, ubek is a term now that millennials use to refer to Cebu. Can you tell us about your experience seeing ubek all over?
Yeah, to me it's very amusing because I see Chingay Odsurum there and we were together when we first launched the first book. He helped me at the Casa Gorordo, Woman with Horns and Other Stories when ubek first came to light. And as the years went on, I would hear about ubek radio station or something like that. And one day I was going down the street, I forget where now, I think near Mandaue, and I looked at the graffiti on the wall, and there was a graffiti of what looked like heaven, and it said ubek. And I laughed. So it's very interesting. Ubek.
Yeah. And now they know that the word ubek came from Magdalena.
No, not from Magdalena, from Woman with Horns.
Oh, Woman with Horns, rather, yeah.
Way back.
All right. We've talked about a lot about influences when it comes to your writing. Are the characters inspired by family members?
By real people. Writers lie. I see Danton Ramonto there, and he knows that we are liars. And we take a little bit from our best friend, and we take a little bit from our enemies and our ex-boyfriends, and I do not know what. And then we make something new. So yeah, there's a little bit of people we know there. But in the end, maybe it's really just me and my imagination. So it's an interesting process. But basically we're lying. But in the lying, we are also telling a kind of a truth. So it's a strange thing that we do, writers.
For those who are coming in, we are having a conversation with author Cecilia Manguerra Brainard, and we are launching her book, Magdalena. All right, I think we are ready to hear another chapter or excerpt from her book. This time, this will be read to us by your friend, and a good friend as well of Cebu Literary Festival. Please welcome.
What is this?
Yeah. From...
Maya.
All right. The other book, which is Newspaper Widow. All right, please.
We asked Mayen and Lloyd to read excerpts from the book that is not here, just so you can get a sample. The Newspaper Widow. And we come back, we will take a look at it. Oh, and just a quick blurb. It was actually inspired by my great-grandmother Remedios, who was a newspaper widow.
Dida, I want to pick your brain. I'm going to ask you a series of questions just very quickly. You don't need to explain. All right. 3 favorite women in literature.
Writers?
Characters, perhaps. Characters.
Madame Bovary. Who else do I like? 3 women characters. Anna Karenina. Oh, we're coming out Russians. In the House of Spirits, I forget the name, but yeah.
One lady there. 3 favorite books of all time.
Favorite books, of all times. My teacher, Passage to India. These are novels that taught me. When I was learning how to write novels, I tore them apart.
My teacher written by. What's that?
No, when I studied how to write a novel, I looked at these novels and I really took them apart. Passage to India, Forster. Forster, A.M. Forster. And then Madame Bovary, I also studied that like the Dickens. I love Graham Greene. Graham Greene. The Man in Havana is his comedy, but he had some serious ones. He's a fine writer.
If you, aside from writing, top 3 favorite hobbies?
Hobbies. I like gardening. I'm always tinkering. At some point I made rosaries. So I'm always making things with my hands. But most of the time I am actually kind of writing.
Favorite tambayan in Ubek? Tambayan.
Tambayan?
In Ubek. So if you were to spend some time in a certain place in Cebu.
In Ubek. Tambayan sa Ubek. Probably the church. I don't know if I call it Santo Niño Church, but I have many churches in my books. Or Old Cebu. I always have Old Cebu in my books. If I
Favorite Filipino authors?
I actually like the work of Ben Santos. Lina, I mentioned to you, Lina Espinamor was a good teacher. Chanel Jose is a good teacher too.
Alright, 3 achievements you are proud of?
3 achievements I am proud of. Actually, I work with in the Los Angeles area. I actually worked with some ex-gang members, and I taught them creative writing, and this was a number of years ago. But I'm very proud of that, because from those really rough kids, and I was afraid to go there because I think they had nunchucks or something with them. A couple of them went on to become counselors, and later on they came back to me and they said that their lives were changed by the workshop I conducted. So I'm very proud of that.
Any book that you're reading now? Any book that you are reading?
What am I reading? I have been actually editing the newspaper Widow. So that's what's in my head right now. So sorry, yeah.
If there is a book that you wish you wrote, what book would that be?
It's not a very ambitious book, but I really like the books of Carlos Zafón Ruiz, Shadow in the Wind or something like that. It's not deep, but it's kind of mysterious, yeah. And if I could write like that, I would like it. So,
all right. We have some young members in the crowd here. If there's one thing that you can tell these people who want to write.
Yeah. What is my advice to aspiring writers? Number 1, read a lot. And then if you want to write mysteries, then read a lot of mysteries. If you want to write love stories, then read love stories. Find out what you really like about those. They will be your teachers. And then here's another thing. Really, at some point, you want to take some classes in creative writing, because you will learn some tricks and you will learn the business. If you're floundering around and there's nobody to guide you and teach you, you're just making it harder for yourself.
In the future, do you want to put up a workshop for Cebu?
Now and then I do, but my problem is that usually I come in and out, but I am willing. So, and I've done that, I give a talk and so on if it's arranged ahead of time. So let me know ahead of time.
We are, before we proceed with the next reading, we are opening the floor for questions. Sige.
I think Aloy, Alex, is also sharing with us.